you. Welcome. Welcome back to episode of Taboo Chronicles. We have a good show for you tonight. We have a guest. I have a guest. My co-host Jackie will not be here tonight, but we appreciate you being here. And of course, I'm Roberta the Tool Lady. And tonight we're gonna have Duno, and I'm gonna go ahead and let him introduce himself.
Absolutely. Hey guys, so my name is Dunu. I appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. So just a brief on me. I'm Indian. That's my background. That's my origin. I actually have a mental health nonprofit by the name of Nerve, and I actually make music. When I'm bored, I read a lot and I look into data because I think it's interesting. It tells you a story about the world.
All right. Okay. All right. That's interesting. All right. Well, Danu, I'm so happy to have you tonight. And I have several questions. I was trying to get you to kind of give us some samples of your music as well during the show. So that's just something to put into your mind at the end. If you got anything that you just throw out at us. But I thought because he is a multiple entrepreneur, so he has several businesses. And so let's first of all, let's go ahead and check in. Where are you at tonight mentally? Where are you at? What number or what mood are you in?
Well, I guess I would need to know what the other side of that range of numbers is, right? So I'm just going to say infinity because I'm not really sure. But and then color, mood, I guess we feeling a little pink, you know what I mean? A little purple, a little cyan, a little fuchsia, stuff like that. Yellow, if you will. But let's just name this segment in those. Yeah, that's the brand colors. So, but yeah, no, I mean, great time. I mean, every day is a great day as long as I'm here. So.
Okay. Well, and I apologize. You did say you're a man of numbers, so I should have said 1 to 10. But he gave us infinity, so infinity is better than nothing because infinity is forever, right? So yeah. I appreciate that. Now I'm not quite as high as you because this is like I'm going. I've been up and then now I'm going kind of down a little bit. So, but I'm about a 7. Like okay. I said, I read some of your stuff. I even listened to some of it, to believe it or not, because I like music. So I will talk about some of that. Now, it was interesting enough. This would just be what we'll start off with. Just a general top of discussion. And a general discussion, because I know you love tech. I read that. But it was really interesting to me because you said tech mental health. And I was like, well, how does that go together? Because the first question is, with AI right now, where do you see that going with mental health and with communities and people?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great question. I love you starting with the hard questions first because I think it's the most important thing. But I think first and foremost, I think the one thing I like always addressing about AI is that there's a huge, pun intended, there's a huge taboo around it. So shout out to the Taboo Chronicles podcast. So there's a huge taboo around it. And oftentimes people think it's this kind of really scary thing and it's this kind of lifelike organism. Not yet. Maybe it will be, right? That's the plan. But I think it's just really, it's just big data. It's just a ton of data and the data is starting to do things. That's really it. But where I see it going, I think first and foremost, the most interesting thing with mental health is going to be tailored solutions. So solutions that are going to be tailored towards each individual. So that could be any context. If we're talking education like us at Nerve, that's, ed tech, so the education technology sector. If that's music, I mean, you can pick a category. So at the end of the day, we're going to see now that technology has the capability and we're continuing to move in that direction, that there will be more, products, services, and all of these things that can be really a mirror of who you are and matching what your needs are directly, which historically the best example I use, and oftentimes I do because it's the industry I'm in, is think about it like a classroom. You got one teacher, you got 30 students. It's tough for that teacher to actually tailor their approach to each of those students. Now, theoretically, we can have 30 teachers and 30 students. So that's the best way I could put it.
Okay. But now the question was, where will it go as far as a community, like a community nucleus, like a combination, because even when I'm hearing you say that still seems it's individualized, because that's what you just told me. But how does that like build like community? Because I'm gonna go back to when I was younger. I could go next door and ask for a piece of cake, or I'd say, well, I did. I asked for cake. I ain't gonna lie. But I could go and ask for a cup of sugar, a cup of milk. But we're more in a society now. We don't even know our neighbors anymore. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
But
yeah, when you put it that way, I see that. Go on, you were saying?
Okay. But we do have this, right? We have all this technologies. I got my laptop on top. So I can talk to people all over the world, but yet I don't even talk to the people next door. Or I don't even feel comfortable enough if I needed something to say, hey, I need something as simple as a cup of sugar anymore, because we just don't do it anymore. So I'm just wondering, like, because I understand you said it's individualized, which is a plus, but how about where does it go with us just being together?
In the communal element. Yeah. I see what you're saying now. Yeah. With that, let's zoom out a little further, right? So this is the thing. This is another analogy I like using, which is a nation. I always like using this analogy of, if a nation is 100 years old, I usually equate that to saying that that's 1 year in human years. So America might be around 400 something years old, right? So we're a 4-year-old right now. So oftentimes, like if we zoom back into technology, we're talking about right now, but the shift is not going to happen immediately. It's going to take quite a bit of time until that element you're talking about, which I would call just humanity, is going to continue to do what it does. So I think once we get over this era of like this infatuation phase, the honeymoon phase, if you will, etc., I don't think you can take that part out of the human. That's my honest opinion. So I don't think community is necessarily going anywhere. I think it's just we're seeing this phase that, because someone like yourself and I have experienced it personally, it feels like it's tough to see what's happening in 50 years, right? But once this settles, I don't think you're going to take the community out of a human. So to answer that question is, I think people are going to go right back to knocking on their neighbor's door. I think people are going to engage with one another. But right now, like a child, we're infatuated with, we're starting to not only just use tech, we're using it really well. But then there's the negative side of it, right? And so once the dust settles, if I think once the dust settles, that's my take on
it. Okay. Because I mean, because I've heard a book that was written that was talking about most of the text and what they're doing to get ready for, like, say, apocalyptic time. And they're doing some really weird stuff, but they're all text. But the author, what he's saying, he kind of said what you said. He don't think that time is going to come. It's not going to be but they're just getting ready for it because they are into tech, and the interpersonal stuff is something that really personally they're not into. And so what do you think about that?
That's a really, really important question. What I would say is there's people like myself in this space, right? Mm-hmm. So it is going to take, the creative, the person that's all about community. As I mentioned, I'm Indian. I'm not sure exactly what your background and your roots are, but there are so many cultures on this planet. And one thing that has been historically unanimous, regardless of the background, black, white, and brown that you come from, community has always been a component. It looks different in every culture, sub-diaspora, and all of that, and what have you, but it has evolved, but that fundamentally stays to be the same. Again, it's just different in each subculture. Now we're seeing access to one another's culture at a rate that we've never seen before. We've never
Right.
seen. So that's
Right.
also, it's tough to take a read on saying, oh, is this negative? It's like, no, we're just really stimulated right now. Like we're really stimulated, right?
Yeah.
And it's because we're accessing things like, hey, I'm into K-pop, and people didn't know what that was just like literally 3 years ago, although it's not new. It's been going on, right? That's their
Mhm.
industry, for example, things of that sort. So I think, I guess kind of briefly going back on what you originally asked about what does the community side of it look like? I think once people engage at a high level with these tools individually,
Mhm.
communally, they'll naturally want to just do what we naturally do. Picks
Yeah.
up the phone, calls your homegirl, and is like, hey, I want to talk to you about blah, blah, blah. Or, hey, he said this, or whatever it may be. So I think that side of things is innately going to happen. It's just currently our focus is on this one, proponent of what's happening right now. So that's just kind of at least the holistic approach of how I see it, at least.
Okay. Okay. Now, I'm American, African descent, and everything else, as you all know. So, uh, what? And you said India, so you're from India. Is
Well, I was
that
born here. Well, if you ask me where I'm from, I'm going to say India, but I was born here. I'm American, yes.
okay? So you are you first generation American?
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. 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 All right. All right. So, well, now, um, let's go um, into some of the questions that we had asked before that you actually got ready for, because I know you weren't ready for that one. But it just was ironic that I had listened to that book, and here we are, and I was like, "Huh, this is interesting."
What
Firsthand.
was the book, if you don't mind me asking?
Um, I think it was the techno. Uh, is it the tech scare or uh the techno scare or something like that. And what he's talking about is like all the things that all of these people are doing, like Steve, a lot of the tech gurus, they're doing really weird stuff, like going to going to Hawaii and making a trench around their house, and some of them are building houses, getting ready for this time so people can't get into their compound, and they're figuring all this stuff out right now.
Yeah.
And so it was so many things that actually, to be honest, some of it I've never thought about, like, you know, do I need a house that I need to like have fire shooting from, or do I need to go to some place that's far out the way people are getting, so it was just they all have different. And then also you could put together some containers, like if you were shipping stuff overseas, some of
Mm,
them are putting together containers underground.
yeah, like bunkers.
Yeah, yes. So it was just all, I was like, wait a minute, what? And so, and then they're like building little areas under the ground, just in case it goes down. But the irony is that they're all tech gurus that are doing this, right? And it just happened to be, I was like, that's the first thing I seen on your bio when I looked up on Instagram. I was like, this is interesting. So let me ask him, is he getting ready too?
I mean, if I had that much money, I'm sure I'd build a bunker for no reason either. So
just just do you got let me get what I could get, and yeah, it's crazy. Some of the things they were saying was just, I was like, oh wow, I would have thought about that. So that's all I was thinking about.
I love it.
Well, um so now, you told me who you are. Now you said that you mainly wanted to talk about nerve. But like I said, I seen that you're a little bit into a little bit of everything, a little bit of everything. So you want to talk a little bit about, go into who you are, and how'd you get to who you are.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, kind of going back to the origin stories, like I said. So, you know, being born here in America, and, I'm Indian, of Indian descent, like I mentioned. So, the one analogy I always use is, I'm sure like Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, like the story of Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. So for
Mhm.
me growing up, it was always this kind of split personality type feel. So I would honestly have these talks, and I would talk back and forth with my mom, and I would always say, hey, by day, I feel that it's unfair that by day I'm expected to be an American, and then by night I'm expected to be an Indian. And so that was something that was, very confusing. And it just,
Yeah.
I could see the split as an individual. Now, as an adult and us being adults and discussing it sounds pretty straightforward. It's like, okay, yeah, fair. But to a kid, yeah, that's obviously got to be beyond confusing, right? So that was, that's where it all started as far as starting to try to find my tribe. Where do I fit in? What attributes make me who I am? Because I had always by nature been a curious kid. So I was, an academic, pretty expected. People, that part checked out as far as being Indian, right? Being
Mhm.
smart.
Mhm.
And then being an athlete, that part did not check out. People are like, wait, what? Indians can play basketball? I didn't know that. Indians are athletic? I didn't know that. And so
Right.
also, it was also a very different time. I'm proud to say that now, if you look into what's going on in any culture globally, like we've seen a huge shift in all cultures. So if
Yeah.
we look at representation at the Olympics, things like that, whatever have you. So, you had academics, athletics, and then just, kind of being me, like just a community person, really outgoing, extroverted, really just into all sorts of community things, arts. So I was a band kid. I used to
Mhm.
like theater, acting, stuff like that. So then people are like, okay, so then are you one of the weirdos, or are you one of the, so it was tough because I was just into things. And then at
Yeah.
that generation, I think, the world rewarded specialists a lot more than they are now. It seems to be shifting more, right?
Yeah. Big time
Yeah.
shifting. Where you get fired because you're a scientist. Where does that happen? That's crazy, right? When
Yeah.
you can study all your life, go intel, and now you fired. Yeah, it's just flip for real.
Yeah.
And it's certainly as I think about that as well as being a scholar, is that wow, now it's almost like, hey, if you should have just known it, it's not a thing of if you know it, it's basically it's no degree deal or anything now. It's just, yeah, it's pretty flip flop on us, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's a big shift. So, what's funny is at one time the world rewarded hard skills, and used to kind of like negate a lot of soft skills and laugh at people with soft skills as far as like communication, the ability to navigate situations, empathy, things like that and what have you. And now those are becoming the most coveted skills, right?
Mhm.
They're becoming the liberal arts, if you will. Like they're starting to become the most important skills that companies are looking for in candidates because they're the hardest to locate now, ironically.
Right.
So so yeah, it's completely flipped. And so then yeah, for me, that was like the early stage of life, right? And then I was an athlete, so my main sport was basketball. And so, I progress along in school and what have you. I'm still just, kind of into many different things, whatever have you. High school comes along, and, I am early stage getting scouted by colleges. Nobody crazy. Now, I wasn't never going to go D1 or anything, but I had an opportunity to possibly go D2, D3.
Mhm.
And for anyone that doesn't know, that just means like Division 1, the highest, largest schools that are coveted in that sport, Division 2, 3, etc. So, I was looking at colleges that were D2, D3, which would have, given me the opportunity to possibly get, a full ride to be able to get an education. So I'm like, hey, there's a win-win there, right? And then, I got injured. And then after getting injured, that was where a lot of things began. So it was a really confusing situation because for me, I have always been one of these. I give an analogy of like that Newton pendulum. You ever seen those things where you have like little beads and they hit and they go back and
Mhm.
forth? So I'm like,
Mhm.
I've always struggled to find the middle with things. I'm a really aggressive person. So if I'm doing something, I'm tunnel vision. That's what I'm doing. I'm full
Right.
blown on that side. So I always use that analogy where I'm like, I swing one way, and if that's where I'm swinging, I go until I hit a wall and I crash into it, and that's where I stay for some time. And then I swing all the way to the other side and I crash into that wall. But I'm really terrible about kind of staying in the middle. So pros and cons. And so, yeah, with that, one of those things in that huge part of my life was about basketball. And then when I lost that, I kind of started a spiral. And so then I started to spiral because that was, my form of identity. Going back on the original, context of I didn't know my tribe. So I thought that that was it. And then I lost that thing. So naturally I kind of started to spiral. One thing led to another. And, what does any athlete do whenever they get out of their game? They try getting back in. And so I did everything I could, physical therapy, rehab, which, tying to some of my other companies, but one of them being holistic. I learned so much about holistic health, natural remedies, Ayurveda, ancient Chinese medicine, all sorts of stuff where I was trying everything I could possibly try. And then while doing that, just to keep up, the best I could do was pills. Take pain pills. It at least temporarily takes the pain away. I can get back to practicing. I can get back to playing. I can at least do it. But as you know, with any of those things, as the pain increases, so does the dose. And then that led into a vicious cycle. Thankfully, I made it out. A lot of people hadn't. And then finally, it led to the point of where, I always say that based on the culture I was raised in, really taught to be nurturers, to be providers, and to give. So tons of pros there because you learn the quality of like giving to others. Sometimes some of the cons are sometimes you're better at giving than you are to giving to yourself. And so that was really tough for me. So then, I wasn't able to ever do anything about it for myself. But after losing 3 specific friends, Duke Ford, Noah Neat, and Louis Jett, 3 of my buddies, that last individual, Louis Jett, is what actually inspired Nerve. And so I wasn't able to do it for myself, but finally, when losing enough friends, I was actually able to flip the switch, if you will, and then start a new
Now, what happened to him, if you don't mind telling us? Was it substance overdose or
mostly substance and mental health, obstacles and things of that sort? And so, the one thing I will say that what we found is, we found that when you look at the research, actually, it doesn't matter, generally speaking, right? It doesn't matter what someone's, choice of action is. So, that could be that could be, becoming reclusive, simply just not going out. Right. Okay. That could be someone just moving around, like they're constantly on the move. They're a nomad and then they don't really have a stable home or a stable, space to call home, things of that sort. So we saw in these different pillars that could be, houselessness, housing insecurities, homelessness, that could be veterans, that could be domestic violence, substance abuse, suicide prevention, or the youth in general, which happen to be our 6 pillars at Nerve. And what we found was, that regardless of the background, what we found is most people just need the right amount of stimulation that matches them. And just like myself, whenever I happen to be an individual that needs a lot of it, I was understimulated. We see this in kids all the time. And that's when you'll see in a young age, if they don't have the thing that matches them, they act out. And so that's what I did, at a young age. I wouldn't, classes for me, even accelerated classes, were just not enough. It wasn't my learning style. I just didn't like it. And I would be ahead of the class in certain things. And sometimes it just would be all over the place. And it didn't match for me. And so because of that, that's when you see a kid act out or do these things and whatnot. So, particular to them 3, there was a lot of evidence when I started to go down this path and learn more about it. And I reverse engineered the process and looked at everything. Actually, a lot of that evidence was there, that it was the same situation for them. Unfortunately, it's just, either the science wasn't there yet or, the knowledge for them themselves wasn't. So.
Yeah. Okay. Now, because I wanted to know, like, so if theirs was so extreme to addiction, what were some of the recourses you took to find your way out of addiction?
Great question. Wow. I mean, a lot. I probably tried everything I can imagine, like I said, so I think maybe just early on in, I'm not sure exactly what would make me that way, but they were also very, very intelligent, curious people. Some of the smartest people I knew, along with the other individuals. So I now myself have lost nearly 50 friends to date. So granted, as I mentioned early on in, I also was into so many different friend circles, had a wide diaspora of friends, etc. So my read on the situation or that data might not be as accurate for every individual, but I have a ton of friends, a lot of acquaintances, whatever you want to call it, etc. And so that may not be as like, an accurate read, but for me, it was just that curiosity that drove me. Like I just needed to know, what was going on. Like I just needed to know like what was I really feeling,
Yeah.
And my biggest outlet, which where music ties into my whole life, is I always say that quite literally, like music saved my life
Yeah.
because, one of the times, two times in my life I had attempted. And so, one of those times, what I had done right before or while waiting, if you will, um, which was a bunch of pills again. And so while waiting, I was writing music. I was actually writing music. And so since I was young as I know, as far as I can recall, I'd been writing poetry, I'd been around music, right? Like, whatever it may be. And so that was a passion point. So I don't know that it was a conscious thing at that time, but I was just rediscovering things I already knew, like
Mhm.
rediscovering my relationship with music, and I was writing more. I would be involved with things of that sort.
Mhm.
Basketball, I was still trying to kind of get more involved and kind of play again and get some
Mhm.
of that outlet and whatnot. But I mean, it was many, many years of, I'm not going to act like it was just like a snap of the finger. Like I was doing terrible for quite some time. So I was just scathing by.
Okay. And most I don't know your age, but I know probably well I would say individuals up under the age of probably 30, 38 on under, having friends die is quite normal anymore.
Hmm.
And when
Super common.
yeah, and it is and it's sad, you know, it says, do you record your music in the studio? He has some wonderful music. It's kind of close to Drake because I did listen to it. It seems like, yeah, it seems
It's
like
like,
Drake is one of your one of the people that you may like a whole lot. So I don't know if that's true or not, but we'll stick to this and then we'll go to that. Of course, I'm all over the place too. That's why I got to stay focused. That you get it. But anyway, um, so I just find it interesting that you didn't make it out.
yeah.
That's cool. That's
Hey,
real
God
cool.
is good, right? So
Right, right, right. That is cool. That's very cool. Now, and I had to ask because I'm looking at you. We're about the same tonation and skin color. Were you accepted in mainly the darker community here in America?
yeah, great question. So I was, as far as where I went to school and things of that sort, my parents were grateful enough to bring us to like a good suburb. So great opportunity, safe neighborhood and whatnot. I will say, however, just again, timing wise, at that time, it wasn't as densely populated with different, diasporas, if you will. So I did struggle with that in school as far as like, people that would, bullies and this and that and what have you. And then it's different. One thing I think I'm very passionate about talking about this topic. It's something I've reflected a lot on this last year while building Nerve and just having a chance to really get in front of different people. But I think one thing that really isn't spoken enough about is the struggle of like immigrant families. Uh, and it's a really interesting thing because what we tend to see, what I've noticed at least, I could be totally wrong. This is just my personal experience, but oftentimes we tend to look at struggle as a unanimous thing, is what I've been noticing a lot of people do, especially now more than ever. So, one, like for an example, subject A brings up, hey, I went through such and such. And then subject B or the other person says, oh, that's like such and such. And it's like, no, it's not though. Like one person is discussing one thing and there's a world
Yeah,
of things that envelop that, right?
yeah,
It doesn't mean that it's a one for one. But I think what humans attempt to do, and this is where we're seeing a lot of evidence of, it's just an act of trying to feel one another's pain. And I get that, right? But I think there's
yeah,
also a huge con to that, right? And
right.
it boils down to what we need to do, in my opinion, is teach more quality communication, right? Of
Mhm.
how do you ask probing questions? How do you engage around the subject? How do you
Right.
actually empathize, not sympathize? Most people don't care for your sympathy. They want true empathy. So
Yeah.
things of that sort. So for me, yeah, like in the suburbs, that's what it was like and what have you. But yeah, that's just something I'm really passionate about speaking on, where specifically, and we're seeing so many things, shift in the nation right now, let alone globally. But yeah, immigrants will go through what they go through. And oftentimes you'll hear people say really insensitive things that I've come across where it's like, hey, but we all got problems and you need to just, push through. Everyone has 24 hours in the day and, things of that
Yeah.
sort. So one example I like using is there's this great coach. I don't know who it is, just something on social media. And he's doing this video and he takes all his students outside. He lines them all up. They're all parallel to one another. And he's like, hey, before we start this race, I'm going to say some statements. If any of these correlate to you in your personal life, I want you to take one step back. So he begins to say things. Were you in a household that only had a single parent? People take a step back. Were you in a household of immigrant families? People, so on and so forth. And I think the rest is pretty obvious, which I can say, openly, is most of the white individuals, the people of Caucasian background and what have you, were still at baseline. If not, they actually got to take some steps forward based on some of the statements he mentioned. And most of the Black and brown individuals had taken quite a few steps back, right? Yeah. And he's like, now this is where you're actually starting in life. And I thought it was a beautiful lesson because it's not about this or that. It's about that is the experience for all of us collectively. Yeah. But if we all expect to be able to talk to one another in a more accurate way, you need to develop the skills for it, right? And if you're in one party or the other, that means it's equal that both people need to develop that skill, right? That means that Black and brown communities cannot also, in my opinion, cannot just say, hey, that's the case and that's all, folks, right? There are things that we need to do and, develop and, reorganize, and then vice versa. And I just, for me, it's just a super important topic. So I got on a tangent, but that's something I'm passionate about.
Well, I mean, that's okay. It's Taboo Chronicles. We can talk about it. But I just know that there is colorism. There's colorism even in different nationalities. Oh, yeah. And I noticed, and so I just know that may have came as part of your identity, because I could see how some, because we don't learn like nationalities. We just don't. No one knows that as a child. We don't know what we don't know. So, but once we're taught, right? Because that's what happens. We get taught, and then when we're taught, that's what we go off of. But I can see, I can see, because we're more of an inclusive community. So I could see them say, "Hey, do no, man, come on over here." And I could kind of see that, and I could kind of see like them being like, "Yeah, you gonna be okay," and not really knowing for any of the other stuff about you, because they don't know, they didn't understand it. Nobody knows, they don't know because nobody has taught them. But just knowing that you kind of look like me, right? And that could be also situations as well, because like you said, it's not a one fit all, and it is a difficult. I can see how that's very difficult.
Yeah, and I think to expand on your question, so I had friends of all colors, and I love everybody. Like it's great. Like I did find one thing that was kind of interesting, I guess. Again, it's just only my read on the situation I experienced. But, if it was academics, it tended to be, one color. It was mostly more the white friends and what have you, right? Mm-hmm. If it was sports, it tended to be my Black and Mexican friends, and if it was theater and what have you, it was kind of a mixed bag, but still mostly white, predominantly white. And so I think that gives a lot of an interesting read on what things were. However, it's shifting a lot, right? Like we're seeing more Black golfers than ever, and I love it. I'm here for it. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. And, and then so on and so forth. We're seeing so many more, brown individuals doing athletics. We're seeing more Black individuals be in academics and so on and so forth. So I'm loving that we're finally starting to get rid of these stigmas and saying, looking the child in the eye and saying, what do you want? Right. And what are you curious about? And I don't care what it is. I don't care if it doesn't fit some narrative that had existed. Just go do it. Just go do it. Just go do it. Go try it. Don't like it? That's fine. We'll just move on to something else,
Right.
Yeah, to expand on that. Yeah, that was my experience. But you're right. Like as far as a lot of like the close relations I had, it was oftentimes like a lot of my Black and Mexican friends and their families. And I always joke with my friends, and I've said in other interviews, I'm like, hey, I was raised by some of my friends' Black grandmas. Like I go hang out with them, and I had some of the best times ever, like just getting to talk with them and learning. And they taught me so much. And so I'll forever be grateful. And that was a huge influence on me as far as music goes as well, and things of that sort. So.
Oh, yeah, because I listened to the music. I did. It was pretty good, actually. Very good.
Thank you.
Now, So now tell us what does your program, because I heard your why. Your why is because a lot of children fall off, a lot of people fall off,
Yeah, people,
and because their background, it's almost like a foundation.
100%.
And and the truth is, a lot of people don't get that foundation because they usually get, especially in what we had when our traditional school system, it
Mhm.
was a one box fit everybody. And if
Yep.
you didn't fit into that box, that's your problem, right? You just didn't fit in. And despite what you might have had going on at home, despite anything going on with you, that's what happened. And so I understand that's your why, and that's a really good why, because a lot of people, that's really the issue. And then we don't see a gift. Most gifts are not all the same, right?
Mhm.
I can't hold a tune, you know. So you know what I mean. I can listen and I like it, and I might be able to move. But to sing a song for you, I couldn't do that. So we all got different gifts, and that is hey Jason. So that's pretty cool that you are discovering. So I'm taking, is that what your program is doing, or how does it work?
Yeah. So one thing I like saying before I ever usually get into this is I also want people to walk away with this, which is generally speaking, every generation did the best they could. So I think that's a big factor into how we move forward with things. I think
Mhm.
oftentimes people look at entrepreneurs like myself and say, "Hey, you're solving problems. Oh, yeah, you must have thought that the world was a problem prior." I'm like, okay, well, yes, there's two sides of that. Like a problem can persist. That's true. But it doesn't mean like someone was intentionally looking to do that, right? Like there's greater
Right.
arts to that. And so one thing I like talking about on the education system is I don't want that to ever be perceived as one, that we're attempting to replace things. And then two, that like the previous generations didn't have similar ideas or desires, right?
Hmm.
I'm sure they would have loved the same thing, but they did absolutely the best they could do. I had some, teachers that were some of the most inspirational people, as I'm sure all of us can speak on, and I can name them first and last name. And one of them I was so afraid to reach back out to for years because I just thought it'd be kind of weird, to be honest. And I'm actually about to have a meeting with them next week, and I'm like, hey, like, Professor Ben, you were
Hmm.
literally one of the largest inspirations to me from that one talk you had with me after a class. And yeah, absolutely. I'll do a
Hmm.
whole round of applause for our teachers, professors, parents, um, you know,
Yeah.
honors, all of it. And it's just so there's phenomenal people. It's just I like prefacing with that because people oftentimes see it as, oh, that past was bad and we've got future ideas that are good. No, there was just tools that were lacking. I can do what I'm doing today because of the technological advancements. But if I was in their generation, good luck. I don't know how it would have even began to approach the solution, to be honest. So that's
Hmm.
one thing I like saying. But yeah, the program. So the program, as I mentioned earlier, is we're NERV. We're a mental
Hmm.
health nonprofit. We're working on a mobile gaming app, and it'll teach students music, video, and photography production. And so,
Wow.
yes. And so we're in the early stages of developing that right now. So it's really exciting work, really great things. And then the goal, God willing, and what the plan is that once we work on these creative media, based arts first, then we'll move on to STEM, which will then give us a STEAM program, meaning science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And so ideally, the goal is eventually having this education technology platform that can bring education directly to a user. And the way I like seeing it is, again, it's not a replacement for something like public school, but I look at it as a supplement. So the
Hmm.
analogy I like using is saying, hey, you guys might be the test, but we're the study guide,
Hmm.
And so we're looking to just create more opportunities to meet the individual where they are, And so a few of those components being that, if you look at the statistics, and this is in America, and then if you look at globally, it gets scarier. But bottom line, people don't have as much access to a laptop, but almost most of the world, like 8 out of 10 people almost have like a cell phone now. So that's why we chose a mobile platform. And then the other component around why creative arts first, right? Not why not STEM, why not science or technology or
Hmm.
engineering or mathematics. So we chose that because One, the research backs that a lot of these young kids, shockingly, although they're digitally literate, so we think, they feel they're not. And actually, when you look at certain tests, they're not as digitally literate as we would hope, in the sense of, equitable skills where they can actually make revenue.
Yeah.
And then two, I mean, let's be honest, like, have these kids want to be like Mr. Beast or somebody, right? So, or they want to do something like this, what we're doing right now, right? And
Yeah.
it takes some of these fundamental skills of knowing how to operate and navigate these spaces, understanding things like lighting and audio, and nobody's going to watch your thing if it's not good, bottom line. And so those are those components. And then finally, we just based it on basic science. When you get a baby, a child first learns creatively. They have no learning base. They first learn by just tangibly moving through the world, observing things, hearing things, etc. And they develop a creative base first. That tends to be their first tools in the toolbox. Once they get those and they start to navigate through this, if you look at their cognitive development from 0 to 9, then after the age of 9, it depends on the child, of course. Some are earlier, some are later, but generally around that ballpark of time, they begin to start developing cognition, which is reasoning. So they start to reason with the world, and they start to formulate an identity and things of that sort, which is these traditional, subjects that we learn, such as science, technology, engineering, mathematics, history, etc. So that's kind of why we're doing what we're doing and what it is. Yeah,
and I also know that they. Go ahead.
I see. I said I sleep. Trust me, I do.
Well, I know that they did cut out this part in a lot of curriculums as well in school because of because of economics, and I know that a lot more of it will be cut out. They're talking about even cutting out the resource centers and the libraries in the public schools. So a lot of the art area will be deleted from our public school system.
Yeah.
So that is going to be a need because, again, everybody's gift is not in mathematics and reading. Everybody's gifts is different, and you're not really you're not seeing the whole child. But what else we say here is, to be honest, we say what didn't happen, what didn't work for us. We can question that and we can redo it. We can, because that's really a lot of our morals and values, or even some of the things we did just wasn't really working for us.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
I seen that look. Do you think that's not real? That's not.
No, I do, because I was thinking
more
about
traditional.
No, like in the sense of like what didn't work means we could revisit it.
Yeah.
Oh no. I love that you make that point, because one of the more interesting facts that people don't realize is, so in the science world, people do all these experiments, and I don't remember who it was, so I don't know who to credit correctly, but bottom line, we work on new experiments. There's this one scientist that had a breakthrough, and he thought to revisit an old experiment. He's like, well, we're always working on new theories, but when we have new advances in technology, why didn't we just go back to original theories that we thought were like invalid and use the new tools to check again? And you would think it's common sense, but people often don't do that. And then he ended up finding a breakthrough. So I'll have to, try finding where it was exactly. And he ended up finding a breakthrough. And it was all because of that. The structure wasn't the issue. It was the tools didn't exist at the time. And then when he was able to go back and he had the tools, he was able to actually crack the code. So I love that you say that, because I'm like, that's such an important point where sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Like, you don't need to go like, oh, I got to discover something. I need to be the one to make this new thing, versus actually this old thing seemed to work decently well, or maybe not even well at all. But rapidly you can kind of take today's tools and check again if that's actually true.
Right. Because a lot of things, even culturally, don't work.
Yeah.
And we hold on to them. It may be values, it may be morals, it may be anything. Mom said you gotta let's see, if you spill salt, you got to throw it over your, you know,
The
it may
superstition.
not have no right. So we may be stuck doing this stuff when we could be stuck re-innovating ourselves. You see what I'm saying?
100%.
And doing a better job than being stuck with some of those things that really didn't work for us.
Yeah.
Um, and that's all around the board. You know, that's educationally, that's every in all areas of our life. I think we could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, there's two sides, right? Like the things that we could revisit and the things where it's like, all right, we tried this enough. Like, we need to move on. Like, stop holding
Right,
on to old, antiquated ways. We need to like move forward, which
right,
is what makes me most excited about things like what's happening in the AI space and soon to be quantum and things of that sort.
right. Now, do you believe that folks will be moving to Mars soon, or how?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, not
Oh,
anytime soon. I mean, if there is some kind of a breakthrough, we might see it in our lifetime. It'll be
okay.
towards the end of it, but I don't know about moving like mass amounts of individuals. If anything, we might see a space station before we see that, a space civilization.
Well, I'm just saying that's part of the goal too, a mass movement to Mars.
Yeah. What is your thought on it? Like, how does that make you feel?
I don't know, cause all I know, I'm not gonna follow nobody to Mars. Hey, you move there. I'm not gonna try to get there with you. That's what I know at all.
I mean, I feel you there entirely. I love Earth, so I'm chilling. I'm enjoying
Yeah, I'm cool. Let y'all go on up there, do your thing. Let
it.
us know halfway. You know, I'm not. You ain't got to worry about me getting. Hey, getting in my car, following you up there. I'm not doing it. I'm
Absolutely, absolutely.
okay. Yeah. So I think I'm gonna be all right. Now, what other things you do? I know it's the music. I know it's just the educational piece. What are your other companies you have?
Yeah. So one of the other companies is Age. Age Recordings stands for Avant Garde Emporium. So avant garde just being like art that's essentially kind of ahead of its time, if you will, or very out there and, what have you. And then Emporium just stands for large store. So we just want to be like the large store of ahead of its time art, if you will. Um, so that's the other company. And then, so we do a lot of media work as well. So we've done media production, event production, all that type of stuff and what have you. So in that world of things in the entertainment industry, if you will. And then that's where some of my music gets released from as well, things of that sort. So, like my catalog is managed by that company. And then you have Holistic Health. Originally, I was working on that project first prior to Nerve. That was actually a company that was planned around working on natural products. So we had, different botanical products such as kratom and kava, and then CBD gummies and things of that sort. To be frank, I kind of pivoted that company from that focus point. I think there are other people that are doing a really great job in that space. And then just being honest, like the market wasn't something that I felt that we could, make the most impact within. So we've actually pivoted. We're working on a really interesting project. I can't really talk much about that one right now, but it is another tech product. And that one is something I'm really excited about. But I mean, assuming, everything goes well, then you might see some more updates in a couple of years on what that looks like. But that's more of like the bunker project, the under the ground project, if you will.
Oh, you getting your bunker together too. Okay. You try to say you wasn't, but now you're letting us in on it.
Just a
Well,
little bit.
okay,
I'm just telling you,
okay.
there's a bunker. I never said where. I never said Hawaii. That was you.
Okay. Well, as long as you don't let us know the location, I guess you'll be okay.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that'll work out. Well, now, so tell me this. You just said something else that I had a question about, and it was not the quantum leap. Oh goodness, boy. That
Age, Avant-Garde Emporium, or Holistic, like natural botanicals. And
it was the holistic.
yeah.
So did you have a store and did you close it down or?
Yeah, so it was all digital. So we were developing some of our own products. It was all proprietary gummies and things of that sort and whatnot. And then, like I mentioned, just we think that we have a way higher opportunity to making an impact for individuals in a different fashion, mostly around technology. That was honestly some of the original focus, anyways. We just chose a different strategy on how to get there. And now we're looking to just basically shut that portion down and streamline the project. So, yeah, again, there might be more updates with that in a couple of years. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. So
absolutely.
it's
And
secret information right now.
then
That's what I'm hearing. Okay.
we're just
Okay.
trying to stay
So,
focused as well. And so, yeah. And then in the meantime, I guess, funny enough, I always tell people, I'm like, I like cryptography and cryptic things, and part
mhm.
of why I like music and lyricism and stuff like that. So I'm like, oftentimes I actually talk a lot. It's just I tend to do it through songs. So if people like updates, I'm like, a lot of times a lot of those little fun Easter eggs are embedded in the music. But you got to work for it. So you would have to be able to decode whatever I'm saying.
Oh, okay. 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 So now you got the secret messages. Now you like the other singers. Okay. Now you guys listen to that. He got his secret messages in his songs too. This long little.
I mean, hey, I love it. I mean, it's what keeps me excited, keep me active, and then keeps me sane in the midst of
Mhm.
working on these things. So,
Now, have you ever? Now, are you an artist too? Are you a digital artist?
digital. I mean, I mess around with stuff, but like if I do anything outside of music creatively, like I do photography and videography. I love photography, mostly
Hmm.
architectural photography. Like I like buildings and architecture and nature and stuff like that. So
Okay.
I just kind of do that for fun here and there. I haven't in a while. I love fashion. I sew garments, funny enough. So working on some really cool pants, and some nice fly tops. So
Okay.
stuff
So
like
you
that.
wait a minute. So you design them too?
Yes. Yeah. So I'll
You
design
all the
them.
way creative, aren't you?
Yeah, I gotta stay alive somehow, right? Like I said, I gotta stay stimulated. So
And everything is online.
no, the clothes are just like more private stuff. So like I'm just kind of working on some stuff. I mean, who knows? Maybe I feel like working on something publicly one day, but like sometimes I just like will make some stuff, wear it, and then I love fashion. So like coming from the Indian culture, I mean, if you look at the Indian women, fun fact, Indian women own about, I think, currently 13% of the world's gold. Um, that's like the world's gold, so it's kind of crazy. And then if you look at our culture, I mean, beautiful clothing,
Mhm.
beautiful, just all of it. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I
Oh
guess I
yeah.
have an advantage there because I grew up just seeing the flyest of the fly things. So I mean,
Okay.
so
Okay.
for
Okay.
me, it obviously kind of it leaked in a bit. So
Okay. So you got the swag. You said you got the swag from there.
basically, I mean, maybe it is, maybe it's not. I just let other people define it. I like it
Oh
though.
no, it's definitely beautiful. I've seen the weddings. Oh my god.
Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
Yes, yes, the weddings
Mhm.
are absolutely beautiful. So no,
Yeah, and it
yeah.
can be 110 out, and you go to India, you're gonna see a man with producer pants on, dress pants. He's gonna have a button-down shirt, no matter the weather. It's just, I don't know. It's part of the culture, I guess. So
That's how he's rolling. He said you're gonna respect it, huh?
yeah, I mean, I may not do it, but
Now, what part of India is your family from? Or
so yeah, we're from the south, and so there's a large city called Hyderabad. It's becoming like a big hub there. So it's basically called high tech city now. So yeah, from Hyderabad, and there's some smaller cities in that area, Kamareddy, some places like that, and what have you. So they're all from that area over there.
okay, and
Mm.
how often do you go home?
Hopefully, I go at the end of this year. I haven't gone since 2010, I think it was. So it's been a while, and a
Wow.
lot has changed. A lot has changed. It is really advanced now. Really great things going on. But yeah, I'm looking to try going by the end of this year. So we'll see.
Okay, and your parents were here as well. That's what I'm hearing. So your parents were here while you were growing up.
Yes. Yeah. They came in, I believe, like a little, like in the mid to late 80s. They
Okay.
first came and they dropped into America in Queens in the 80s. And as you know, as what was going on in the 80s, and in New York, especially, it was not a good neighborhood. It was very bad. They were in like Jamaica, Queens, pretty much. And
Wow.
so it was, the crack era, Reaganomics, all that good stuff.
All of it.
So
Yeah.
I've heard some crazy stories about what they would see on the daily, just walking on the streets. I mean, there'd be honestly people in the junkies in the street, just people that are, it was a different time. It was a different era. And then not much better, but then they moved to Philly. That's where I was born. And so they moved to Philly, and then still, obviously Philly's a rough town, especially back then. And then finally they came to Texas. So
Okay.
India, my story, their origin, India, Philly, and then Texas.
Okay. Okay. Some of the roughest of roughs. Now, can I ask you, wasn't your mom or dad a doctor or?
No, not at all. No, but they were really well educated back in India. So unfortunately, at that era of time, I think they're not doing it as bad. But unfortunately, when they got to the country, their degrees did not transfer. So they worked that hard, but they didn't allow their degrees to transfer. So they had to start at the bottom of the totem pole. And for most of my life, my dad, I was used to him working 3 jobs, and then the normal was 2 jobs. So different, unfortunate. That's why, sometimes I say that's why I work so hard, because it's like that's a really unfortunate situation to go through, where you clearly put the work in and it's evidenced. And honestly, if you look at the Indian curriculum, you can take a 6th grader in India and they're usually at a college level almost, or 11 or 12th grader level in America. So, but I mean,
and you know why colleges do that, or why they do that here? It's for the money.
Yeah,
so you can basically, you can go to somebody else. You can go one university and try to transfer in another one, and they'll promise you that everything on that other transfer is totally not what they would have, but it's not what we would charge. So we want to be able to. It's the truth. We want to be able to charge for that. It's a money maker, you know. And so that's why they do that. Now, before we leave, because we got 3 minutes, if you want to tell us, tell our audience how to reach out to you, what to reach out to you, where they can find you at.
Yeah, sure. So for me, all of my handles are at Dunnu Now. So that's DUNNU now. So NOW. So it's at Dunnu Now. You can find me on whatever, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, etc., Facebook, all that good stuff. And then, Nerve is like the big project we're working on right now. So again, we're a mental health nonprofit, working on a mobile gaming app, and it teaches students music, video, and photography production. So we're working on that. You can find us on all platforms at Nerve HQ. So Nerve is spelled NRVE and then HQ. So you can find us on all those platforms. My music, you can just find it under Dunnu. I've got one record out right now called Mo Money, Mo Bastards. That's what I honestly believe is the truth. And then, on YouTube, same thing. You can find me at Dunnu Now. So you can find one of my music videos and things of that sort.
All right. Now, would you like to play that song before we leave out?
How could I do that? Let's see. What's the easiest way to do that? You want me to just play it off my phone or something like that?
Yeah, you can play it off your phone. You can also, I think you can play it on the app as well here.
I could possibly, for the sake of
you have it on YouTube, it would.
Yeah, YouTube, I can go to that song.
Okay.
Let's see. So, let's see if it lets me present. Share screen. All right. This is the music video.
All right.
Say, Chad, that beat all the way with the tone.
Luke Becker, Luke Fatter, Luke Clapper,
Luke, Clapper, Luke, Bagger, Luke, Fatter, Luke, Clapper, Mick Jagger. That's a whole band. Money on fan. I don't need pan. Fly like pan.
Right.
Fry like Cam. I like down. Broke a whole fan. Broke a whole fan. Up like down. She go around. We gon' make it out. We gon' make it out. Homie, no doubts. My people know routes. Running on droughts. Smart like house. And then you guys can finish the rest. It's probably one of my favorite lines in it is running on drought, smart like house. I don't know if y'all ever saw that.
All right.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Good. Pretty impressionable. Well, like I said, I listened to it before we even came on. As soon as I got your information, I looked it up. So I did enjoy it. I did, like I said, I did hear some of the styles. Who's your favorite artist?
Ooh, my favorite growing up was Tupac. And so he was one of the biggest inspirations. As much as it was the art, it was also his personality. He's just fearless and just super energetic, really out there. And I got a lot of, honestly, my early personality from him. So that was a lot of it, just, being just absolutely unwavering and willing to stand on what you believe in.
That's right. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you tonight. I look forward to seeing you again with this bunker situation. As it unravels, so we can see where we're gonna be in this bunker. But other than that, thank you all for joining us tonight. Good night, and love y'all.